It's The Journey with drug and alcohol attorney Mark G. Astor.
All right, everybody, good morning. Welcome to another edition of the...
You need your mic on you.
I hate when he does that. Check, 1, 2, 3. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Journey, and I'm excited to have as our guest my good friend Andrew Burki. Morning, Andrew.
Morning. How you doing?
I'm good. You?
Good.
There's a whole lot less of you today, so...
Oh, yeah. Just lost some weight.
Yeah, he looks pretty good. We'll have to talk about that too, I guess.
Sure.
So, in addition to... Is it celebrating 18 years of sobriety?
Yeah.
And Andrew's got a great story, and I've heard him speak a bunch of times. He's a phenomenal public speaker, and maybe you should have gone to law school. You made a hell of a lawyer, by the way.
We were dissuaded from pursuing law school back when I got in recovery. Unfortunately,
Okay, fair
it's
enough.
a bummer. I mean, I like being a social worker though. So.
Okay, all right. So you're now the chief public policy officer of the Hanley Foundation. You're also at one time the CEO of Life of Purpose, which was a really cool treatment program because it was basically the first ones that were on a college campus.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I've heard you speak, and I know that you're doing some really cool stuff. I think you've been in DC recently, and
Yeah.
so I guess we got to catch up because the last
Sure,
time I
yeah,
seen you
let's
speak
do it. Let's
was
do
at
it.
Jewish Family Services, and you were telling your story, and you wowed the crowd because you showed them one of your supermodel photographs, right?
Oh, my my mugshots. Yeah. No.
Well,
I actually just published one, or not published, but posted rather one for my 18-year anniversary. Those are actually a problem for a lot of people in recovery because so what they do is you have these websites that essentially blackmail people that are trying to get their lives together, and so they'll take you have taxpayer dollars that are funding the jail system and paying for these mugshots, but then they're in public record, as you would be familiar with as a lawyer. And so what they do is they go and they get the mugshots out of public record and then they post them online, right? And so your mugshots come up when someone Googles your name. And this is very problematic for us in terms of like access to education, access to employment, access to housing. So then what you have to do, you have to call them up, and it's essentially state complicit blackmailing of people with substance use disorders. Then you have to call them up and pay them to get your mugshot taken down. But then there's nothing that prevents them from like letting their buddies know that like, oh, we got someone who's trying to get their life back together. Post them up on different websites. So I was like, all right, well, I'm in a good position to just pull the Band-Aid off on this. So I posted it because I've shared them in presentations and stuff before, but I've never just like put one out publicly. So I put it out on my 18-year anniversary, like with a picture. So it was a picture of me. And I picked the worst because I have more than one mugshot. I picked the absolute worst mugshot. I'm like all scraggly looking with like a pockmark on my face and like greasy hair and stuff. And
No, but you had the whole long hair going. I think there was a couple of the ladies in the audience who were like, "Wow, Andrew had game at one time."
Totally. Well, you should see the other mugshots. I had some good ones back then, But so I posted that picture, and then I had a picture in the vice president's office at the White House. So I posted them side by side. It was like, we can, and because it's your 18-year anniversary, right? Like everyone's gonna say congratulations. So that's how I addressed my mugshot situation.
So maybe we need some legislation on that. I mean, I know you've been doing some stuff in DC.
We really do, actually. We really do. Because I work for Hanley Foundation, as you mentioned, right? It's a legacy nonprofit. I mean, they've been, like when Nancy Reagan was saying just say no, Hanley Foundation was like, listen, you're kind of messed up. Like we're gonna try to get your family some help here. And so it's like you have this very, very supportive employer because it's 18 years. It's been a significant enough time. But I mean, if you have 6 months, if you have a year in recovery, 2 years in recovery, I mean those mugshots, prevent a university from accepting you. They prevent an employer from hiring you and giving you a shot. They can prevent you from accessing housing, like if you're trying to rent an apartment or something along those lines. So we actually do in case you want to take on a massive class action lawsuit, the recovery community would appreciate it.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting dynamic. The problem is that some of these internet companies that are posting stuff, if they're offshore, good luck with that. That's part of the problem. I mean, and even now when we do expungements on criminal cases, I mean, you can get a court order that says remove it from the public record, anything that's been posted by, say, the sheriff or the clerk.
Right.
But, once stuff's out on the internet, it's there forever, and you cannot get it down.
No, it's a huge problem. And it's actually problematic that it can be out there, it can be framed in a very misleading way, right? I mean, this is like, you got pictures of me, I mean, almost half a lifetime ago, right, on drugs, getting I mean, this is not the entirety of who I am as a human being, right? I mean, I'm a person in long-term recovery, I'm a social worker, I'm a husband to my wife and a father to my son. There's all these other, aspects of who I am as a person, and this really frames me like in a very specific light, which is, I mean, whatever, like, I mean, my family and my employer are both awesome, so like it's not really an issue for me, but there are people that it is a really, really serious issue for. And there's, I mean, your point about like once it's on the internet, it's there forever. Like you just don't have the right to be forgotten. And I'm actually lucky, right? Because I mean, the internet was around, but it wasn't like it is now when I came into recovery, right? Because I came into recovery in 2001. So, I mean, you didn't have these things. So I didn't have to deal with these things when I had, 6 months, a year, 2 years in recovery, the way that people do now. I mean, like, someone might not find recovery as a result of this. I mean, someone could end up overdosing over it. Someone could end up committing suicide over it. I mean, there are serious repercussions from hitting people when they're at their lowest, at their darkest moment, and really trying to exploit them.
Okay, so maybe we do need some legislation.
Yeah, so no pressure to the legal community.
I don't know, I have to speak to some of my friends who do this class action stuff. It's worth. I'm going to talk about. Maybe I'll figure out something.
Good. This has been a highly productive interview. That's what we need. I mean, no, I say that jokingly, but actually, the legal community has tremendous capacity to shift the public narrative and to shift the way that we do things. Like I do a lot of work on criminal justice reform, ban the box in higher ed, ban the box in employment, go and speak at prisons and things like that. And it really all stems from this lack of equitable access to care, this lack of equitable access to evidence-based youth prevention, right? Which is what Hanley Foundation does, which is why I love them.
So tell me what that means, because I see you sort of doing lots of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's the main focus of the Hanley Foundation?
The main thing that we do is we do evidence-based youth prevention. So we provide evidence-based youth prevention to about 65,000 kids in the state of Florida. But what I do for them...
What does that mean, evidence-based youth prevention?
So evidence-based youth prevention is a fancy way of saying youth prevention that works, right? That there's research to substantiate that this actually positively impacts kids and produces successful results. So if you look at, and there's a couple different aspects to this. So first, everyone agrees that children deserve access, and we should actually start with the premise that every single child in America should have access to evidence-based youth prevention. Second, if you look at it from a financial standpoint, every dollar that's spent on prevention, on effective prevention, I need to specify, saves $4 in healthcare costs and $7 in law enforcement, right? So when you're looking at these sort of like large numbers, surrounding substance use disorder, the economic impact of it, the death toll, right? You got 70,000 people dying from drugs per year, 88,000 people dying from alcohol per year. Economic impact of the opioid crisis alone now exceeds $500 billion. If you look at alcohol and other drugs, the Qualified Venture Survey from 2016 put it, and it's pretty conservative. I read the whole thing. It's like 80 pages or so. And they show all of their methodologies on how they got to these numbers. But it shows, $1.45 trillion in economic impact per year. I mean, that's like more than the real estate value of Seattle and San Francisco, every single building in both entire cities leaving the U.S. economy. We lose more money than other countries have as a gross domestic product for the entire country, right? So I mean, it's just like staggering numbers. And so you have that aspect, but what makes it effective is that you're not doing these scare tactics, right? So when they say youth prevention, they do a lot of stuff like crash cars, for example. Like they'll take a car and they'll, put it like at a high school, like from a drunk driving accident. And the research actually shows that that's unless the one time that works is if it's someone from the school, right? So if you're like, that's
because then you really feel the impact, right? Then it hits home.
Then it becomes personal.
But if it's like watching a TV ad where the guy's frying an egg in a pan, this is your brain on drugs. The guy's like, man, I'm hungry.
Or
kids
kids are smart and they're conniving, right? So I mean, we so they're just like walking along, boop 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 on their phone. They see the car and they're like, well, I guess I'll call an Uber, right? And that's the solution. That's all you've done, right? With that, and then the DARE program, which is what we got, is very, very ineffective. And that doesn't mean that it's not well intentioned, right? But it's this whole drugs are really expensive. Concept is not particularly, that's actually not what it stands for, but it is hilarious, so I say it from time to time.
I like it. It's good.
So, but it's not, and then the scared straight stuff is crazy. Think about this from a legal perspective, right? So this is the only situation where you can have a state paid employee, right? Like a police officer from the state, go into a public school and threaten a child with a future of sexual violence against them if they develop a treatable health condition. And that's exactly what's happening when you're like, you're a really good looking kid, you're not going to do too well in prison, ha 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 ha, and everyone laughs. I remember when that happened, our class, and everyone laughed. But think about what is being said. It's like, if you develop a substance use disorder and we catch you with it,
we're going to punish you for it.
In prison, and because you're weak and little and a child and pretty good looking, you're going to be sexually assaulted repeatedly.
Listen, if you look at the mandate in Florida, the legislative mandate when it comes to crimes, the mandate here is to punish first and rehabilitate second. It's in black and white. They don't hide it. They're like, listen, we're going to throw as many people as we can in prison, and we'll fix them after the fact, if at all.
Right. Well, and that is catastrophic for the individuals, and that's also catastrophic for the society, right? Because we're going to cycle through. You have 1.6 million people that are currently incarcerated in the United States, but possibly even more. Those numbers are a little bit old, but so we'll call it 1.6 million plus people that are currently incarcerated that meet medical criteria for substance use disorder or dependence. And I'm not anti-law enforcement. I'm pro law enforcement in treating people with substance use disorders the way that I got treated, right? And this is a big thing that I talk about, and this is a big thing that I push for policy on, because we don't have a problem with the treatment system in the United States. We have a problem with access to the top tier treatment.
100%. And I've talked to State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg, who's done an amazing job clearing the industry.
Great. I love him.
We love
Dave's
Dave.
awesome.
And I've said to him, if somehow we don't make access to treatment available, to everybody here in Florida, either they're gonna be going through the revolving door of the emergency room or the revolving door of the courthouse. You're gonna spend the money on them anyway. It's just a matter of when.
You spend more. So federally, you're looking at like $75,000 per person per year to incarcerate. Some of the state bills for incarcerating a person per year. I just saw a report out of New York. They're spending $330,000 to incarcerate some inmates there. That's
every year.
Every year.
That's ridiculous.
That's crazy. You can provide recovery support. You could provide recovery supports to a person for 2 decades for what they're spending on 1 year. And we don't need recovery supports for 2 decades. But if you look at which populations recover and which populations don't, impaired professionals do extremely well, right?
Because they have the support, right?
They've got
the Florida
the
bar
support.
says, listen, we're not going to disbar you. We're going to help you get well.
Totally.
Well,
you guys do amazing.
You still
Judges
get
and
clients
lawyers
money
assistance
afterwards.
programs.
We'll disbar you, but right now we'll help you.
Yep.
Same with the doctors and I think some of the other professions.
Yep, doctor, basically anyone with the trade association. Judge and lawyers assistance programs are phenomenal. Physicians assistants, nursing assistants, pilot assistants. I mean, all you guys get a 5-year long continuum of care, right? It's like, listen, you're messed up and you've got a lot on the line. So here's the deal. You can go get better and we'll support you, or you can refuse and we'll disbar you. And that is a highly motivating factor.
For sure.
For sure, right? So, but if you look at the success rates, right, they're all incredibly high. They're all like cranking out 85 to 90% success rates. Everyone gets a 5-year long continuum of care. And that is actually what is happening with young people that are coming from privilege and that have families that are able to financially bear the burden of filling in all the gaps. But I mean, I'm a formerly incarcerated person, as evidenced by the fact that I have mugshots, right? And spent Christmas in there, like a couple. I mean, it was unpleasant. It was an unpleasant time. But
and I laugh at that because every time I see you, you're always wearing like a suit. I've never seen you without a suit. I've never seen you in jeans or shorts or a t-shirt. You're in a suit and tie all the time.
Oh, I'm going
Always.
between Christmas and New Year's. I'm speaking at a prison right outside of Wichita, Kansas, right? So I mean, it's like going to the frigid Great Plains to speak to these guys. And I mean, I dress to the nines when I'm going in to speak with inmates because I want to let them know, and I want people in recovery to know that we can and do recover given proper support. And all of this stuff, all of this narrative about we're never, these people can never recover, this is too high a bar, like it's a lie. I mean, it's about whether you have access, and specifically equitable access to care, because there are people that were not fortunate enough to have a father who's an economist and a mom who's a surgeon who had the exact same treatable health condition that I did 2 decades ago, and they're still locked up for doing the same thing. And I mean, look, like if you kill someone, like if someone murders someone while they're high, like you're going to go to prison, right? But we should still actually give you treatment while you're in prison, because at some point you're going to come back out into society where I live, where my wife lives, where my kid lives, and I want you to be better. Right? I want you to have the same opportunity. I mean, this is why we're working on like restoration of Pell, right? With making sure that Pell grants are accessible to people who are incarcerated, because it dramatically reduces recidivism. It's phenomenal for the mental health of us while we're incarcerated. And this is a huge deal. And it's just dumb. It's like it's not just morally wrong. It is dumb from a fiscal conservative standpoint to not help people that have substance use, because we've always got money for prison, right? Nobody's ever
that's part of the problem, right? I mean, first of all, I mean, the whole idea that that having a substance disorder is not something that's voluntary, right? In other words, it's involuntary. No. If they want to stop, they could.
Yeah.
They started. And so we have that issue, and then we have this we've made incarcerating people, especially people who are sort of minorities and don't have access to treatment.
Sure.
We've made a business. It's a good business, right? We're privatizing prisons all over the place. It's ridiculous.
We are cattle to these people. I mean, we are literally livestock to these people, and they want, and that's why actually, and it's not even just the incarceration. It's the whole system when we're released, right, and the probation and having to pay. Fines like while you're trying to get back on your feet. It's insane, right? And we have a number of places that we have this problem. And this is actually one of the reasons that I'm very supportive of like the Portuguese model, right? And the way that
I read, did they legalize all drugs?
No, so that's
Not
actually
right.
So I was actually just with Dr. João Goulão, who's the drug czar of Portugal, in October.
Did you see stuff on Facebook?
He's amazing.
Portugal has legalized all drugs.
Yeah.
I'm like, really?
Totally not accurate.
I'm sure they haven't legalized everything.
Totally not accurate. So first of all, they actually, they haven't legalized drugs at all, right? And this is very much this narrative that's getting pushed by, so you have like this sort of like axis of evil corporations that are really having a problem with the shift of trying to get people in recovery, and they're pushing back really hard. So you've got the industrial prison complex that has a very vested interest in anything we do while we're engaged in a substance use disorder constituting a moral failing, right? Because drugs are expensive, so people steal things for drugs. They commit crimes. This is where prostitution, all of it, right? Like there are very few crimes that are not associated in some way, shape, or form with either your own substance use disorder or mental health concern, or if you're like drug trafficking, it's for the purpose of making money off of other people's substance use disorders, right? I mean, like there's not a lot of espionage killings going on. I mean, this is like what is the source of crime in America is untreated substance use disorders and untreated mental health concerns. So you've got the massive opioid lawsuits going on right now, right? I mean, these are going to be multi-billion-dollar settlements, and how much they actually have to end up paying very much is I mean, you would know this as a lawyer, but it is a major problem for them if they're exploiting a vulnerable population that has a treatable health condition. And so this is where this whole like rollback of the disease model has come from, right? So I mean, for 50 years, I mean, we've been like longer, we've been like, this is a disease, this is a treatable health condition. And now all of a sudden it's like, you know what, people need to be able to choose their own path to recovery while they're still getting high. And I'm all for, listen, like people don't have to recover like a specific way. I mean, people have done it through, churches, treatment, all sorts of peer support groups. There's no one size fits all. But you know who the least appropriate person to make a decision about whether I need recovery or not while I'm actively using drugs is? It's me. Right? Like, because here's the problem. The organ that's diseased is also the organ in charge of executive functioning, i.e. making choices. Ergo, I cannot make a choice while I'm high. This is why I very much support these pretrial diversion programs. Yep. Because I needed that time to clear my head. I needed that pressure. That's how lawyers recover at incredibly high success rates, is because there's pressure from the judges and lawyers assistance program, from the bar. That's how doctors, it's like, listen lady, you're gonna go and you are going to get better, or we're gonna pull your medical license. She'll get better. But when you have young people, you don't have a lot of that pressure. And that's why, so what Portugal's doing, sorry I got totally off track there, but what Portugal's doing is they're running a massive pretrial diversion program, right? So they've got 10.6 million people in the country. It's roughly a third the size of Florida, a little bit more. But they're not running a 10.6 million person drug free for all hippie commune. In whatever.
The whole country's not getting high.
Southwestern Europe. Yeah, no. What they do is if you get caught with any amount of drugs, right? They weigh them. Right, they weigh them, and then they're actually using the 1993 UN guidelines on what that were set up for sentencing, that on what constitutes personal use and what constitutes trafficking. So if you go and you're running around Portugal with 50 kilos of cocaine, You're trafficking. Like you're going.
I don't care how much
go to jail. It doesn't matter if you have a substance use disorder. At that point, you're trafficking. But if it's a 10-day or less supply, because they're very rational about this, right? So they're like, listen, people that have drug addiction or substance use disorder. So we're very big on language. Don't run around with more than 10 days of drugs on them at once. People that are trafficking typically don't run around with less than 10 days on them. And so what happens is if you get caught, you get referred to this panel that has a therapist, a doctor, and someone from the government, but not a judge or a lawyer. And you have a very informal conversation. They're like, what's going on? And so if you're like, listen, I don't actually have a problem. I'm someone that practices moderation. I use drugs a couple of times per year. I was, whatever. I was at a bachelor party. Things got a little bit out of control. They're like, great. No fine, no jail time. This is your warning. Don't come see us again for 6 months because you're a grown-up. And here in society, what we don't like is people running around drugs in public where we have children, right? So if you come and see us again in less than 6 months, we're going to start piling fines on you and whatever, and it's going to be a serious hassle. And that's it. You go on your way. If the really important thing is if you have a substance use disorder, so first of all, no matter how many times you get caught, they can never impose monetary penalties. Like this is by law in Portugal, right? So they can mandate you to therapy, family therapy, they can send you to treatment, and then it's all covered. Right, so they've got 60 of these therapeutic communities all around the country. They're very specialized, right? So it's like, here's the one for, males under 25. Here's the one for older adults. Here's the one for women with children. If you have children with you, right? Like if you're a young mother who has a substance use disorder, like you take your kids to treatment with you, and you get a year, right, in this continuum. You're not an inpatient for a year, but you get, you're inpatient, then they help you with housing, they have tax credits that they literally go and like stimulate small business with. So they go and they're like, listen, we want you to hire this person, we'll give you tax credits for 6 months, hold your judgment for 6 months, because like the first week might be a little rough. They might show up late, like they're not bad people, but like they gotta, we're learning, right? But it's awesome. The whole system is geared towards getting you well. They'll provide therapy to family members to teach them how to interact with you as a person in recovery. It's phenomenal.
So how much success do they have with that?
Oh, I mean, we had 70,000 overdose deaths last year. They had 31 in the whole country that were lethal overdose deaths, right? Now, of course, obviously, we have a much larger population, but you're talking about if you're adjusting for per capita, it would be the equivalent of us having under 1,000 overdose deaths per year.
Wow.
I mean, so they're just crushing it, and then they have everything else. But they do medication assistance, treatment. They have vans that provide it for people. They're mobile. They're really smart about it. They've started dabbling in like safe consumption sites, right? Which, I mean, we've got a whole thing going on over here in the U.S. about. But it's fundamentally different because they're providing all these wraparound services.
So let me ask you a question. So that when you say the consumption sites, those are the place where, because I think I saw it in Denmark or Norway, one of those Swedish Nordic countries where you can basically go to a site and you can inject clean, pure heroin, right? But also you get access to peer support. So the whole idea is you come in, you don't use needles that are infected with any kinds of disease, right? Or you're not taking something that's laced with fentanyl. But also, somebody's going to be there and say, listen, we know you have a problem.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how do we get you off so you can become productive again.
Sure.
And I know that there's been, I think, at least one facility opened like that here, or there's been talk about it
They're trying to open one in Philadelphia right now.
Right. I think I read about that.
In Kensington. So, okay, so this is like, all right, there's a couple different things here, right? I'll try to cover this quick. So, very often when we're talking about safe consumption sites in the U.S., they cite Vancouver, Canada a lot, the Insight facility that's there. They cite Portugal a lot, although they inaccurately report that drugs are legal in Portugal, which they're not. And in fact, actually, Dr. Goulau has said if you decriminalize drugs and don't provide anyone help, the problem will actually get worse. Because at least if you're arresting people, you're getting them into some sort of system and trying to help them, right? I'm very opposed to people being punished for their substance use disorders, but it's actually better. I mean, it's unbelievable how we're rolling out harm reduction in the U.S. I'm like, you actually made a system worse than jail for us. So your proposal is you're going to leave us in a state of homelessness, active substance use disorder, and mental health concerns, and just let us like roam around until we die, right? Which is
or somebody else.
Well, but you're not providing any help, right? You're not providing any help. This is why, I mean, I just spoke about this at a congressional briefing up in DC, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Harm reduction with wraparound services is great, and if we get smart about it in the U.S., we'll actually be running these things at hospitals. They'll just repurpose ambulances, right? I mean, they'll just repurpose an ambulance and go around. But the way that they do it in other countries, to your point, right, is they're like, listen, how are we going to help you? What do you need? Do you have a problem with housing? Do you need therapy? Do you need medication-assisted treatment? Do you need access to, clinical services, employment, education? Do you need food, right? What is going on in your life, and how can we help you get better, right? That's how everyone else does it. In the U.S., we're rolling it out as hospice care for the poor. We're just think about it, right? So if you're they're doing this thing up in Kensington, right? So first of all, leaving aside the fact that they just redlined this into, the poorest, most devastated community in the entire city. Leaving that aside for a sec, which is another good argument for mobile needle exchanges and mobile safe injection sites and things like that, if you're going to actually do them properly with wraparound services. Leaving that aside, you have, if there's a 16-year-old girl who's prostituting herself and addicted to opioids, right? And she goes, that's great that, you've got a volunteer with naloxone on hand to revive her if she overdoses, but you've done nothing to address the fact that she's homeless, she's prostituting herself, she's a child, right? That is in a really desperate situation. Her ACE score is probably 9 or 10. God knows what childhood trauma she's gone through to get to this place, and what trauma is continuing to happen on a daily basis by leaving that person unassisted in this environment, right? So harm reduction's great, but harm reduction needs more funding. If we want to get smart about it, we need to pump funding into harm reduction.
Because we're on the clock here.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
So no, it's okay. I listen. I was thinking to myself, I'm gonna have to get Andrew back here because
jump around.
No, he's great. I love hearing you talk,
Yeah.
brother. But so. The elephant in the room has always been we don't have money for this. We're in the richest country in the world, and I have to tell you, with all the bullshit that we see that's going on in DC, and I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on, that to me is a giant waste of money. We got people who are homeless in every major city in the country, and they're dilly-dallying around with this bullshit. I do not buy the argument we don't have money to treat people. I refuse to believe in the richest country in the world that we don't have fucking money for this stuff. Excuse my French.
Yeah.
We must do.
Well, you actually have. This is, you have tremendous bipartisan support for getting people better, right? Both sides of the aisle are bearing their kids.
They can't figure out how to do it, though.
They can't do it, right? They can't do it, and that's because we have such a and you have to think about, so look at just the opioid crisis, right? The opioid crisis is the sort of hot topic or whatever right now there. Okay, we're in the 23rd year of this opioid. It's actually the 4th opioid crisis in U.S. history. You have, the opium dens during the 1800s and during the railroad expansion. You've got the opioid crisis at the beginning of the 20th century, leading up to the passage of the Harrison Narcotics Tax Act in 1914, which is really the beginning of the drug war in its modern stage, even though we always blame it on Nixon. And then you've got this third epidemic when veterans came back from Vietnam, and then you have the current one that started in 1996 with approval of OxyContin, right? So we're in the 23rd year of the current one. That means that people got addicted, had babies with neonatal abstinence syndrome. Those babies were born addicted. Those babies then grew up to full adulthood and overdosed and died as grown-ups, right? That's unfathomable that it's been going on for that long without us being able to. We lost 500,000 Americans in the last decade. 500,000 Americans.
It's
and then
ridiculous.
You toss in alcohol, right? That's another 880,000. They're pretty steady, 88,000 deaths per year from alcohol. for decades on end, right? So that actually kills more people, right? So I mean, like, if you look at substance use disorder and you start racking up, you put in suicide, we got 45,000 suicide deaths per year. So you look at these brain diseases. I mean, you're talking millions of more Americans have died from these brain diseases in the last, 2 decades than have died in every single war the U.S. has ever been a part of in the history of the country, including the Civil War, where we're counting people getting killed on both sides as Americans. I mean, that's wildly dysfunctional. So these guys need to get there, and they want to. And there is bipartisan support on this. And you've got guys like in Florida, you've got Congressman Rutherford from Jacksonville, right? I mean, it's like 41-year law enforcement veteran. He's the former sheriff of Jacksonville. And I mean, he's like, listen, if we do a good job on the prevention and the intervention, we'll never get to the enforcement. I mean, that's a big deal when you've got cops 41 years as a cop, and he's like, this system's broken. Get a treatment center in this jail.
So you've got members of Congress like that, then you have other members of Congress who have prisons in their district, right, that are providing tons of employment. They support the economy, and you're like, oh, I know, let's pull the plug on that prison.
Yeah, but you've also got members of Congress that have been impacted. I mean, this is not like disclosing anything, but I mean, Congressman Trone from Maryland, right? Close family member died of an overdose, and I mean, he's on a rampage, and he's awesome.
Listen, we had the Kenny granddaughter, I think, was it 6-9 months ago, overdosed and died.
No, well, and that's the whole thing, right?
So it's
that's
not like they're immune.
It's hitting everyone, right? There's no population that's protected from this, which is actually something that like efforts to change get criticized on now, but is actually something that is fundamentally different than when we think of what we have historically classified as other epidemics, because this isn't coming from South America or from, chemical labs with the methamphetamine epidemic, actually has never gone away. It just doesn't get news coverage anymore. It's still very active, west of the Mississippi. They actually have more deaths in most of the western states associated with meth than they do from opioids, right? It just doesn't get as much coverage. But it's a whole separate problem. You get someone from Idaho in here for one of your shows, and they will very clearly tell you that the methamphetamine epidemic is not gone away. But what is fundamentally different about this is, so you've got more people dying than have ever died before, right? I mean, more people die in a week, right, during the opioid crisis than died in all of some other epidemics that we had, like the meth epidemic of the 90s or something like that, did not kill as many people as we have die, in a week, a month, whatever it is. I mean, you'd have to crank the exact numbers, but I mean, it's just a staggering number of people, and it's hitting every community, and it's actually hitting communities that are older communities, like DC is super weird. There's this old veteran black population that came back. They've just been doing heroin for since the 70s, and the fentanyl's just wiping them out. So they actually have that's a city that has senior African Americans, senior black citizens are dying at disproportionately high numbers because of overdose.
So that's another issue, right? Because I heard somebody say this at one of the presentations I went to. They're like, why is it, when you hear about all these old rockers talking about, their history of, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right, how comes they didn't drop dead? Well, some of them did, but a lot of them didn't drop dead because they didn't have fentanyl laced in their heroin and coke like we do now.
Well, there's that, and they also had access to resources, and this gets back to the inequitable access to care, because every single American should, and every single American family should have access to good treatment if and when they need it. Every single child should have access to evidence-based youth prevention, none of the scare tactic stuff, right? But you go in, you talk to them, you say, look, this is how drugs affect developing human brains, right? And alcohol, actually, which is a drug, but don't tell anyone, people get upset. So I mean, even though it's
well, listen, when you turn on the NFL and they glorify the fact that drinking beer,
totally.
I mean,
totally.
What do you expect?
Yeah, and so you have, and that's really the goal of prevention, right? The goal of prevention is to delay age of first use, if it's good prevention, as long as possible. Because if you start experimenting with drugs at 12 or 13, you're statistically going to have a substance use disorder. If you can hold out till like 20, like you're probably going to be okay. Like maybe college is a little wild, but then you're going to get a job that drug tests you, and you're going to have a family, and you're going to like drink wine, and it's going to be fine, right? And that's, you have hundreds of millions of Americans that are able to moderate, and if you look at them, almost all of them ended up in that position because they did not start using early, and that is the fundamental goal that we should be pushing.
All right, so let me ask you, because I got to wrap this up.
Go ahead.
And I might have to get you back because I love sitting
No,
and
I'll
chatting
come
with you
back.
about this
I always love hanging out with you.
Well, we can talk
Try
about
to
it.
pack in a bunch
The next
of
time I see you,
information.
you'll be like 150 pounds, and we're not left for
Oh
you.
God, I know. Well, I'm on this like Ewa, my wife tells me to.
The intermittent, tell me.
Yeah, I lost 50 pounds. I lost 50 pounds. I'm significally lighter. Well, because you know what the alternative to it is?
Divorce.
Is that would probably put a ton of weight on.
Actually, I got divorced. I lost a ton of weight.
Did you?
I went on the divorce diet. Yeah, well, I was overweight because I was miserable, and I said I got to lose some weight, or I'm never going to get another date again. So that was 20.
We're not getting
that was 20
divorced.
years ago.
She's awesome.
So
she's awesome. Yeah, there's fast food. No, the alternative is you go into all of this like garbage, nonsensical alt recovery. Like, oh, you're in recovery when you say you are, right? And then you just do a bunch of math and say you're in recovery. That would be another way to lose it. I didn't go that route. I went with like diet and going to the gym.
the healthy way.
The healthy way.
So short term, where's this all going? Are things going to change in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or is this?
Oh yeah. It's coming.
Okay.
It's
so what's coming?
So you've got the opioid settlement money coming, right? Which one way or another is. Because there are so many people that are hardline making sure that these resources, however they get there, get to the front lines. Because the tobacco settlement money, you only had 2.4% of monies collected went to cessation and prevention efforts.
Because if government can find a way to waste the money, they will.
Well, North Carolina grew more tobacco with their tobacco settlement money, which is like amazing. Like, how'd you pull that? Really, like unbelievable that they pulled that one off. So anyway. So you've got that going on. You have this ongoing battle with the insurance companies, who are another one of these corporation, industries.
We can have a conversation about that.
Very invested in continuing to be able to violate parity, but there's just too many people dying, right? I was at the CARE Act hearing. Is Elijah Cummings' bill up in? He just passed away recently, but he was a major champion for us on the, other side of the aisle, right? Because you have people, like I said, you have people on both sides of the aisle. Him and Rutherford could not be further apart on many issues, but they're both hard line. They were both hard line pushing for access to care because they both have, both their constituents are dying in both their communities. So, but that's $100 billion bill, that CARE Act that he proposed, and that they're still, whatever, like nothing's happening right now because of all of the political civil war that's going on there. But they're going to have to pump major resources in, because Americans just find it unacceptable that if you go to high school, think about you're not that much older than me, and you're in better shape. But
you're catching me though.
This is new. I'm working on it. I'm trying to catch you. But a kid cannot start American high school and go to that school for 4 years without knowing another kid that's going to be dead within the next 5 to 10 years. It was a really big deal when I was in high school if someone died anywhere at any of the high schools in the city. It'd be like a drunk driving accident 10 towns over that we played soccer against, and it was this is a tragedy. And now it's just normal. We just find it there are so many people that are desensitized to this now, and they're that's what happens. Young Americans just die all the time, and a lot of people are pushing back against that. And I'll tell you who's going to change it. It's not us. It's not the people in recovery. The people that are going to turn the tide on this are our parents, right? We actually do a bad job on taking parents and putting them up as props when we're speaking, and they hold their signs, and it's very impactful. But we need to start getting parents speaking, because like the drinking age in the single most valuable market on earth, the United States of America, is 21 instead of 18 because of a couple pissed off moms. I mean, nobody messes with moms. Nobody messes with moms. I mean, they get presidents, governors, people. You take a meeting with moms, and now that these mothers of loss and fathers of loss are really starting to activate, some of them are setting up their own like organizations and foundations. Some of them are demanding Hanley Foundation has a whole support group system that we're providing to parents of loss, because pressure was put on the state to find someone to provide these groups, right? To really like support these groups. And then they came and were like, listen, like, we love you guys, but like this now needs to happen. This is like this. I know wasn't your main thing, but like this is your thing now. So we're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I mean, and it's awesome. And the more and more and more these parents step up, I mean, because people, I mean, what are they going to say? What is a politician going to say? You're going to be like, I don't care about your child that died?
It's not that important to me. I'm going to build a bridge to nowhere.
They'll get voted out of office. Yeah. They'll get voted out of office. The parent, like, I'll tell you what. I mean, this 10 years that we've been in, this decade that's about to end in like, a couple weeks, has been brutal. But the 2020s, these parents are going to step up, and these parents are going to take us across the finish line, and we will see. I will come back. I will come back 10 years from now, and we will have a fundamentally different system for how we treat people with substance use disorders and mental health concerns in the United States, and that's going to be because of the parents. Mark my words.
Listen, I love that you said that, and I always love getting a chance to sit in kibitz with you, as we like to say.
Yeah! No, it's always great. I love being in Bogue. Oh my God, it's so cold up north right now. I was like, this is fantastic. I'm just like, bebopping around in your subtropical paradise.
It's a beautiful thing, right? They'll teach you to move to Philly. You should have stayed your ass down here.
I got to be close to DC, man.
I know. So listen, where are you speaking next? How do folks find out about Hanley? I mean,
so you can go to hanleyfoundation.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And then I think I've been trying to like do some other things other than just speaking. So I've got I'm gonna be here I'll be back down here on the 30th of January for Art Palm Beach. The Opioid Spoon Project is going to be down here. So that's going to be awesome. In fact, actually, if you want, I'll try to get Dominic, the artist that made the Opioid Spoon, to hop on your show if you want.
Actually, I would like that. And also, maybe
he's awesome.
Can you send that link to Jay so we can post it?
Yeah, sure. They're really cool. They're really, really cool. And so he does this thing, just real quick, I know we're like over time, but he does this thing, this honor tour. So he has this giant 800-pound spoon. He's dropping it off at Purdue and stuff. But he did this honor tour where he brought it around and families of loss signed it. I went to the one in Philadelphia, and I mean, like, everyone's crying. Snot's dripping. Like, it is intense and visceral. I mean, the experience of like seeing, hundreds of families of loss, like their signatures all over this massive. I'll get you in touch with him. And then I'm doing at Wake Forest. I'm the moderator, so it's sort of speaking on a panel that is covering adolescent brain development. So it's like, all right, well, we have this mountain of evidence that drugs are really terrible for adolescent brains. So shouldn't opioids be the last response, not the first response for anyone under this age?
I mean, we could have a whole conversation about that too.
So those are my two in January.
I see a lot of that, but
yeah.
I'm going to get you back here because I love talking to you, and I know that you're just a wealth of information. Listen, you give it to me honestly, and
yeah, no, it's a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Love what you're doing.
For coming on, brother. All right, for more information about what we do, drugandalcoholattorneys.com. You can email me, Mark, at drugandalcoholattorneys.com. You can call me 561-419-6095. Don't forget to like us and subscribe us on YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, LinkedIn,
everywhere.
Wherever
the internet.
Wherever Jay's put me,
Go to the internet.
I'm there. So until next week, thanks for tuning in.